welcome to Week 7, Day 2 of the LEC Summer Split. Lots is on the line today, most importantly for Misfits and SK, if they have got a lot of catching up to do if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. Hello guys, I am Excoundrel, and today joined by Big Papa and Vedius here for Ready Check. I was
the
actually
Big
paid.
Papa for Day 2. Are you ready?
I was paid to say that. Sorry, dude. I was paid to say that. I had to say Big Papa.
I love it when you call me Papa.
I'm gonna move on to the standings before we derail this entire conversation. Let's take a look at where we are in the standings, and you can see right now, XL on a 3-game unbeaten streak. They have jumped 2 spots.
Yes, they're now sitting in 8th place. They're making that run for playoffs a reality. We thought that they wouldn't be able to do it, given they still had to get through Splice, Fnatic, and G2. But they've overcome the first obstacle. There's only 2 left to go, and they don't even necessarily need to beat them to secure a spot in playoffs. So XL looking primed, looking poised, looking ready.
And all those expectations that analysts make are based on top teams performing like top teams, but teams are dropping. You know, Vitality getting that win over G2 yesterday now brings that parity even closer in the race for 6th, which of course is the playoffs cutoff. So right now, it does feel like anyone can make it in there.
Yeah, and we're playing into that classic EU trope of everyone can beat everyone. With G2 losing yesterday to Vitality, it has opened up the middle of the table, but more importantly for the likes of Fnatic, also opened up the top end of the table.
Yeah, it certainly has. I feel like our standings really are shaking up, and I have my eyes mainly focused on the bottom half of the table because to me it feels like that our top half is relatively solid. Even though they're dropping games here and there, they've managed to build up enough of an advantage that I'd be very surprised if the likes of Origin and Schalke were actually pushed out. But I'm keeping my eyes on who of our bottom teams will be able to make that that final push through, who can make those upsets happen, and who can actually secure those 5th and potentially 6th place spots.
I mean, the heat is really ramping up now. That's kind of what we have to look towards. With everything on the line, we still have that situation where anybody can make it. Obviously, some teams need a little bit of extra help, but realistically, anybody can get there.
I think every team except for SK Gaming, if I understood the stats meeting right, has their own fate in their own hands. They can still win out and make it to playoffs. SK Gaming need a couple of other results to go their way, but that's an exciting place to be in. We're ignoring, of course, a final match where it might just decide top place between Fnatic and G2.
Yeah, it certainly will, because due to the head-to-head situation, if Fnatic is able to find a win over G2, not only do they tie them in the standings, but they will be 2-0 up over G2 Esports.
Hold that head-to-head.
Meaning that they can hold that first place spot for now. So a lot on the line. The battle for Athens is certainly on, and it's only going to be an exciting next couple of weeks.
And this is a very, very important day. But with only 2.5 weeks left before the playoffs begin, let's check in with Quickshot to see how G2 are doing.
They suck now.
Well,
all right.
Yikes.
Insightful.
that's a thing.
That was really insightful.
Thanks,
it reminds me of Reddit. Very results-oriented.
It does seem like that, yeah.
I think, you know, realistically, that was a very results-orientated opinion. But that's unfortunate. That's a little bit unfortunate. And with the apparent steep decline in G2's performance...
Sample size of 1.
I wanted to take this moment to really exploit a resource that we have available to us, which is PapaSmithy. He's an LCK analyst. And I want to take the time to see how some of our some of our LEC teams may stack up against our LCK teams. And this is that important part of the show, important part of Ready Check, where you guys can get involved in Twitch chat. What you need to do is when we compare 2 of the teams, you either spam LEC or LCK to be able to vote on which team you would think that best of 1 matchup.
Feels like a fair platform.
Very scientific.
Yeah,
I'm sure people here are going to be agnostic of region and just go for the winning team.
That's what I think. Yeah.
I think Twitch chat, this is upon you.
Behave, Twitch chat.
You're objective. You are the objective viewers. You're here to vote in accordance. I know you're LEC fans, but this is an objective part of the show.
It's important, fans. Make sure that you only pick the correct answer.
So actually, our teams are a surprise to pretty much everybody
we got
here.
nothing.
So let's see which 2 teams we have to kick things off.
Put them on the board.
SK versus Griffin.
All right, I think this is the one to test whether Twitch chat is working. I'm watching you guys on this one. All right, sell me something on SK Gaming where they could actually look to compete against Griffin. What do you got on SK Gaming? Because look, they are at the moment 10th place. What is this? What is this?
It's just starting. It's just starting. Come on, chat. You've got to be a little more objective here, because even I, as a big LEC fan, look at this matchup and feel Griffin have a slight advantage.
A slight. A best of what? 50 here we're talking about? One? What are we doing?
Saying, like, if it's best of one, maybe like
and
one
you're wearing your lucky socks.
Yeah. Guys, right, we need to move on to the next matchup. Let's have a look at what we've got coming up. Twitch chat, I love you. You're very objective. Let's have a look. It is Fnatic versus...
Okay.
This is not bad. Fnatic versus SKTT1. And if you didn't know, SKTT1 have been doing much better in the LCK as of late. So I'll start with you, Papa. Where are we going here?
This was definitely one that I would have had super Fnatic favored before Rift Rivals. I think that's the time where that would have been super clearly there. But looking at it now, you know, trying to think about where this is at, I actually think it would be very close. And a best of one would almost be a coin flip based on draft. I think a lot of what Fnatic does in the drafting phase would potentially catch SKT off guard.
Yep.
So it's definitely one that I would put as a coin flip, but maybe Fnatic favored right now.
I think if it were to be a best of 5, I would put SKT
and I'm with
in
you
this
on that.
situation, because I feel that something that Korean teams, but specifically SKT, have demonstrated, even their series against G2, is how they evolve and adapt throughout a series. And I feel a lot more faith in SKT's flexibility as a team and the versatility in their comps. Whereas Fnatic, while looking relatively strong, have still showcased what is a still relatively linear style to me, where if they don't find that early lead, they struggle as a team.
Well, Twitch chat got it pretty even, 52% in favor of LCK here. So that's not bad, Twitch chat. Well done. Let's go on to the next teams, however. We'll see what's coming up. It is going to be XL versus Gen G.
Oof. This feels sensationalist like the first one, with XL jumping up in quality here. You could see their mark and execute plan that's got them a 3-0, potentially putting a throw into Gen G's side. But I actually think that Gen G would be able to read the map and grind this one out enough to be able to take down kind of both a best of one. I would definitely side with them on a best of
So
5.
I think in a best of 1, I would always give a chance to XL, largely because I think that their ability to find early game leads and snowball has only been getting better. And my big debate for you, PapaSmithy, was how confident do you feel in Gen G's ability to control and track an early game advantage? Because I feel like that would be XL's biggest strength. And while I do agree in a best of 5, the advantage actually goes to Gen G, I could definitely see XL causing some surprises.
So the small reason why I think Gen G can always grind you down into a longer game, and because the sample size is so small of XL being able to actually accelerate and close games, like a really good Baron call yesterday worked there, I think Gen G keeps it to 40 minutes, it goes to 42, and Gen G grind it out.
I need to move on to the very last one. Twitch chat called that just in favor of XL, and that's probably the first time XL's ever going to be competitive in LCK team.
Oh, what is this?
I think I'll take that compliment. This is
what is this?
G2 versus Jin Green Wings.
I mean,
okay.
We all know who's going to win
We
this
all
one.
know who's going to win this one. Obviously, Jin Air. I mean, how can you really match against the might of a team that is yet to win in the LCK? It feels like that their diverse set of strategies, the individual talent, G2 wouldn't stand a chance.
I would love to get your opinion here, Papa, but I think Vedius
look,
is...
I'm going to make an honest point here.
Sure.
If Jin Air played Jin Air would find a way to lose. So I think G2's got this one.
Okay, well, let's take that and go a little bit more serious now, because we have those playoffs closing in, and with the race for playoffs being as close as ever, we want to make sure you guys know exactly what is going on, and we have Quickshot ready with a playoff check-in.
Thank you very much, Excoundrel. That's right. A little bit earlier in Ready Check, our analysts did talk a lot about the standings and how they can implicate the postseason. Let's start with the obvious. When we look at the standings, G2 Esports are locked into playoffs. They are now battling for seeding and obviously looking for that preferential first or second seed to secure the bye and the guaranteed appearance in Athens. Take a look at our second place seed, Fnatic, at 10 wins and 3 losses. Now, they will lock in a spot in the playoffs with a win or with a rogue loss. Either of those things can happen, and Fnatic are guaranteed postseason. Turn our attention to team number 3. It is Splice, and it is simple. If they beat Rogue today, they are in. So, if Splyce beat Rogue today, both Fnatic and Splyce are guaranteed to make it into the playoffs, and that means there's only 3 spots left. Now, if we look at the rest of the standings, I want to draw your attention to Vitality and Origin at 6 wins and 7 losses. That's currently our benchmark for playoffs. Nobody is mathematically locked out of playoffs. The standing is whoever's going to hold that 6th place and how we determine who is locked out. Right now, as I've mentioned, Origin and Vitality, 6 wins and 7 losses. If we look at the rest of the bottom of the table, I'm going to look at SK Gaming as an example. They currently sit at 3 wins. If they win the rest of their games, they'll end the season with 8 wins, which technically would qualify them. However, it would also require a number of other teams around them to lose a considerable amount of their upcoming games. So while nobody's mathematically locked out, it is very difficult for teams like SK to make it in. For today, keep your eyes on Splyce versus Rogue. That is the game that can help determine whether Fnatic and Splyce guarantee the postseason. We're going to head back to Excoundrel for the rest of Ready Check.
Thank you very much, Quickshot. Yes, obviously today's games are important, but maybe none more so than that Splyce versus Rogue matchup. And I guess that means we need to have a look at what's going on today.
Sounds
we have
good.
a very, very good set of matches, and I actually think there's a couple of really interesting ones. My personal favorite that I'm looking forward to, obviously G2 Fnatic. We don't need to say much more than that, but other than that, Origin versus Schalke for me is a personal highlight. Anything that you guys are particularly looking forward to?
I'm really excited for XL versus Vitality. I think it was a really difficult one to predict. I think that based on the performance of both teams, they're both looking very good coming into today. And I know that my mum is really excited for the XL game as well.
Okay.
So I have to be excited for that matchup too.
I flew all this way to cast great LEC matches. I think we were up and down yesterday. I'm looking to the last one today. I know it's the easy one. It's the big seller. NA, everyone will be tuning in. I have great faith we're going to see something amazing in this match of the eons.
Match of the Eons.
That's what they call it.
You got the line in there, mate. I like
Hashtag
it.
ahead.
Let's have a look at what the guys predicted today then, because we have got some interesting matchups. I kind of just chose randomly. Let's have a look at Vedius. You went Misfits, XL Splyce, Origin G2, and the only difference that we've got here, and that's what I'm going to press you on very quickly, XL versus Vitality. Why XL?
So it was a really tough one for me. Largely, I have a little more faith in XL's consistency over the last 2 weeks, because Vitality, whenever you see something great from them, you also then tend to see new problems arise immediately the following game. So I'm putting a little bit more stock in the fact that XL only seem to be getting better and better from game to game.
And I think it's very easy to overinflate Vitality beating G2, and yet I have a Vitality prediction up there. And then honestly, that's because the Vitality side of the game was very, very strong. And even when you exclude the Garen, I thought 2v2 bot lane, Vitality were able to grow up a big lead. I think that's an area they could target against XL, which isn't as tested, that potentially they could find the victory. So I think this one will be very, very close.
Of course. I think it moves us on from the games that we had yesterday. And we did have some spicy games yesterday. And I think one of the most interesting picks that we saw, a moment of sheer brilliance, was when G2 locked in Garen. We have got Ender nearby to break down the do's and don'ts of this pocket pick.
Thank you, Excoundrel. Now I'm going to teach all of you out there just how to play Garen like the G2 champions we know and love. Now, if you're at home, you probably need to know what your abilities do first. And more importantly, if you're on the LEC stage, you need to know what Garen actually does. We have a very intense clip here at the start of the game where Wonder uses that high APM of his to hover over those abilities, reading through so many words per second here to understand exactly what this character does. But I recommend if you are at home, just go on Pro Builds, type in Garen, and actually you're going to realize that no one's playing Garen, and you're going to rethink that decision. You're not going to actually lock in that pick if you want to win. Spinning to win, it's dead. It's not a real thing. I'm sorry. Now, one cool thing, I suppose, that Wonder did in this game is he took Unsealed Spellbook on the pick. That was like my one positive for him, because if you're playing a champion that usually goes Grasp the Undying against a ranged top laner, well, you're never going to be able to proc that, so take the Unsealed Spellbook, thank me later. But speaking of ranged top laners, there were 4 on the opposite team here in this game, which makes Garen a very unhappy person. So again, if you're G2, go ahead and do that. Lose the game. That's totally fine. If you're at home, don't pick the Garen against 4 ranged characters. Just do me and all of your solo queue teammates a favor right there. Also, if you're Wonder in this case, you don't actually need to put any points in your W judgment because the community is going to be taking care of that for you. Now, in this game, you can see Wonder struggled a bit. to say the least. He gets one auto attack off there. Gets maybe a couple autos off in the rest of the game, but more importantly, he never got his ultimate off even a single time. In this clip here, when his Nexus is going down, he presses his R key for the first time in the entire game, but he's killed before the spell can go off. So in summary, just don't do it. It's not worth it. I don't care if anyone's up in the crowd holding a sign for you. Do not pick that champion. Although, if you are a Fnatic fan, you might be hoping that G2 lock that one in as those two teams face off in our match of the week.
Oh, Caps! He just solo killed Puma!
Are you kidding me?
Triple kill!
The fastest win of spring, G2 destroy Fnatic.
G2, the perfect teammate!
G2 Esports, Fnatic. The main event, for sure. I would have had these two teams in the top 5 teams in the world. Fnatic need to prove that the G2 victory wasn't just a fluke. Meanwhile, for G2, finally it's personal for them.
Fnatic, they managed to beat G2 Esports in what was an absolutely brutal game.
That's a lot of damage on Caps. Whippo does not have the ignite, but Caps is just forced away. Caps has to flash the chase! Fnatic do to G2 what G2 have done so many times before. They obliterate them.
It showed just how relentless these two teams are when they go up against each other.
It was like a solo game. At some point, enemy team had 15 kills and everything could one-shot me. For the next game, I will look to just win my lane.
Stuff that didn't go as planned, so it was kind of unwinnable, but also, yeah, we were really trolling. This time we won't troll.
If you look at it from Fnatic's perspective, they beat G2 with their best champions and used G2's volatility against them.
Only very few teams can match them in terms of individual talent.
This is what peak League of Legends looks like, and it comes from Europe!
But luckily for us, we're one of those teams.
Fnatic are the kings of the West, and they will represent in the World Final!
I think that when all their players are playing well, they look at their strongest. Once some of their players start making mistakes, it's usually the others that pick up the pace.
Kind of scary thing about G2 is that they're doing even more than the human eye can sometimes notice.
G2, they look stronger than ever in Europe, and I have a feeling that they are looking to get revenge for their only loss of the split so far.
I was counting recently and I think G2 is 17-16 against Fnatic all time. So we can't lose to make them draw. Me and Mickey have been killing our opponent 6 games in a row now, so there's gonna be another one on the list.
If we were to pick on someone from Fnatic, it would probably be their Nemesis or Broxa, because they seem like the easiest targets in their team.
I would like to see G2 try to come and steal my lunch money. I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
You wanted to see that Dragon Rage?
Go, the flat!
And a player like Yankos, for many people, the MVP of summer, like Broxa, put him in the dumpster last time.
You see that in the First Blood participation, right? The First Blood King is no longer the First Blood King. Brox has taken over.
Questions for me in this matchup are all around the early game. Whippo, Hylissang, Broxa, they will have to unleash their aggression and their creativity to inflict enough damage so G2 doesn't get to their devastating mid-game.
We don't play late games. 2 or 4 games went past 30 minutes. Every early game was one early game.
Caps with an axe to grind, 98 times out of 100. He's looking to style.
So who wants to kill the king?
I am not a king. I am not a god. I am
worse. It's history in the making, and the outcome of this match could very well decide who gets the first seed for Worlds. I think this is going to be one of the most exciting games we're going to see all split, and I can't wait.
The games against them are always really bloodthirsty, really fun, and I just want to know where this one takes us.
I don't want to sound like too cocky, but I don't think we're gonna lose the split. I already visualize myself lifting the trophy. The first step is LEC and then Worlds.
Fnatic's aiming for first place. You want to be the best. And you want people to see that you're the best.
I don't think anyone would be okay with us going second. We want to win everything.
Motivated G2, big match feel. Let the games begin.
Oh, the hair's raising up on my skin after watching that. Sold the whole thing for me, but this is an insane match. It's a highlight.
There's so much history between these two teams. The 18 and 17 isn't a a clear representation of how the legacy goes for these two teams, because it's always been one on top and then it's the other and then the other, and it's constantly a trade of who reigns atop of Europe. And right now it is G2, and Fnatic are trying so hard. They're looking to reclaim the title of being the best.
And while not all of our fans were around for all of the heydays of these squads, let's just go immediate. It is the 2018 World Finalists versus the 2019 MSI champions. So it is an international match that people around the world will tune in for.
It's going to be the highlight of today. It is our match of the week. But on the topic of G2, yesterday we did see that Garen top lane pick, which left us wondering why. Well, after doing some research, we've uncovered the top secret process which G2 used to determine their draft.
We're going to show them?
Are we sure about this?
We might get in trouble for this. We might get in trouble for this. I'm going to take a risk.
Okay.
I'm gonna bring it on to Ready Check. I hope Grabs doesn't grab me after this and say, you shouldn't have shown. But we have a very special way that G2 determines their champions. So I would like to introduce you to our very, very special wheel. The Wheel of Champions.
This music is great.
It's good, isn't it?
I wonder if G2 have the music playing when they're also deciding. That's my big question.
I think you must. I just don't think it works without the music. And I think we're going to.
So we've already seen one pick that they've done before.
But it's still on there.
It's still on there.
But there are plenty of others there. So let's take our first spin of the wheel.
So let's see what they're going to be playing up against Fnatic today.
All right, you get this one, Vedius.
Oh, it looks like it's going to...
It's Shaco.
Okay.
Go. How do they play Shaco?
It's going to be Shaco support. I think it'll be a Shaco support. You can have Mickey play it down in the bot lane. You go AP Shaco. You stack up those boxes in the brush. You get a lot of brush control. I think that's an effective way that they can take advantage of this pick.
They tried Garen in the brush. It didn't work. But the boxes, you can move around. You don't have to be there the entire time. You can make those macro plays and leave the boxes to be your friend.
Think of the roams as well. He comes into your lane invisible. Boom. Surprise Mickey. Easy gank setup.
Okay, I've got another spin. I want to wait on this one. I've always wanted to do that thing where you spin the wheel.
Okay, spin it.
Ready? Whoa! See,
that was really well done.
Sure.
All right. What do I got? I got the nocturne. Yes, I got something. Oh.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
A
Mumu. All right. So a Mumu. I think this is going to stay conventional. Put him in the jungle. Who got away with that one? Crowd control. That could work. Jankos is pathing. They're first. Throwing out bandages. What's not to like?
I'm more inclined to go for the top lane Amumu with Wonder. I'm thinking like full AP, one-shot Amumu, CC.
What about that laning phase that he likes?
I mean, we've already seen how great his Garen top lane is. Surely his Amumu could work just as well.
All right. I think we've got one final spin. I'll let it do it automatically.
Spin that wheel.
No. Oh, no. Good enough.
All right, I'm hoping for the Nocturne.
I'm seeing a trap.
Okay. All right, so clearly this is their decision-making process yesterday, and it didn't work. So please never spin that wheel again, G2.
I mean, okay, let's say you had to redo.
Hey, we actually got some help from our Fnatic friends.
Exactly.
On the segment yesterday.
That's true.
We heard it from Whippo. Predator Garen is the way to go.
That does make sense.
You can gap close with it. It's a bit more burst damage. I'm loving it. Fnatic actually gave G2 the solution they needed.
I don't think we're going to see our game show influence G2's picks today, unfortunately. It is a big stakes match. You know, bringing it a little bit back to reality. It's a big stakes match, and as much fun as we've had with the wheel, I think we're actually going to see a different flavor from G2 today. I think it's going to be more serious.
I hope so, because I think this is a matchup where they care very much about how they redeem what they were able to do last time. Because remember, Caps got shut down, Wonder got shut down, Broxah was entirely controlling the map, and it feels like the G2 want to come in and showcase that they are currently the best team in Europe.
And I think we have to now move from our last game of the day to our first game of the day, which will be Misfits versus SK. I briefly touched on it at the start of Ready Check. Both teams need this win. They're coming off the back of devastating losses.
Yeah, they did struggle a little bit in both their games yesterday. One was a little closer than the other. And starting with the one that wasn't quite as close, Misfits' game was a bit of a struggle against Origin.
And then with Misfits in particular, the big issue there was they had a nice idea at the start of the game, trying to get the lane, to get the preferential lane for leader. But things started to fall apart very quickly, and Origin kind of read them like a book. We know what Misfits' strategy is. At some point, it will be throw all the resources into leader's lane. Problem was, Cold was there first, and that one kind of fizzled out pretty quickly.
When we talk about leader, we talk about feast or famine. This was one of the famine games.
Yes.
This was leader not popping off. But the stats here highlighted, the one thing that I do want to draw your attention to is this kill participation at 80%. It makes me feel that Misfits as a whole struggled here.
See, it's a big number, so you're kind of baited into thinking that's a good thing for Misfits, but it kind of echoed for me that the only plan Misfits had when the early game didn't go perfectly was, let's send everyone bot lane. Origin was there first, or there to counter gank, and this was not what I was hoping for. I was kind of pushing for, give Dan something like his Jax that he can carry on, and then when leader gets to leader levels of carry potential, he can take over the game. But with the Karma, trying to buff up teammates that just weren't ready to go, and buffing up leader wasn't enough.
And this is the big thing that I think we continue to highlight with regards to this Misfits team, is that leader is in a stage of development. This is still his first split. He joined halfway through. He did have a couple of intermittent games, but now he's playing with effectively like his comfort roster. And I feel like that the team is trying their best to enable him, but the rest of the teams in the LEC are looking for an opportunity to shut him down at every opportunity. So increase the options in your team. Put Dan in a position where he can also threaten to carry.
If it's all about leader, it's predictable for both sides, and predictable doesn't get you playoffs.
On the other side of the coin, we've got SK. They're on an 8-game losing streak. Yep. It could not be worse for them in such a critical period of the LEC to be on this kind of losing streak. How do they turn this around?
Well, I think that right now, bringing in GenX was a great change, and I think that we got to see an opportunity where they almost won this game, but the bigger issue is that realistically, they never should have been in a position to win this game anyway. We saw the ball being thrown back and forth multiple times, and it was a bit of like a hot potato as who's going to drop it first. And while it looked like that Rogue was actually the one to drop it, in the end, they were able to hold out in that base defense long enough to actually mount that comeback and ultimate win. And that must have been devastating for SK. And all we can hope for is that GenX continues to provide more creativity and options in how they play, because right now, we're only going to see a further and further decline, and that lose streak extended.
Definitely, it feels like there's a mid-game they might feel decent about on the SK side, but especially the late game and to some degree the early game, they were kind of forgettable and needed a lot of work, not the sort of work that can be done in just a single day in 24 hours.
I like the fact you mentioned GenX, because it actually brings a really unique flavor to this particular match, because it is essentially a rematch of the European Masters Spring Split Finals, which will be GenX versus Leader and Dan versus Sacre. This was exactly the same matchups that we saw in the European Masters Spring Finals. And there's a bit of history here. Misfits won that pretty convincingly, so maybe a bit of revenge for SK.
Well, it could very well be, and I'm excited to see the fact that we have these EU Masters players rising up. We often talk about how GenX and Finn last week were two players we were looking forward to seeing if they would make their LEC debut, and now we're getting a rematch of the EU Masters finals, and I think it's exciting to see how they stack up against each other now that they have a lot more experience underneath their belt.
And I just love that we can zoom out and appreciate that what happened in the EU Masters, that pathway from kind of playing solo queue to making it around the national leagues, which is a very unique part of the European ecosystem. The fact that we're recreating that in the LEC, in a match with playoff implications, like, it's kind of probably surreal for them, but it's just something we can appreciate, because seeing that growth is a great sign for EU.
And coming into this matchup, my eyes will be on these two, or these four players, rather. I feel like Sacre has not had the most impressive split for his debut. He was hyped up a lot coming into the LEC, and expectations were that he would level up the SK that made it to playoffs last split. So far, he has not been able to do that. And whether that's a result of him or his team is very debatable. But today, I think that he has a great opportunity to showcase his skills up against the likes of Dan, a player that he has matched up against before. And on the other side, for Misfits, we want to see both their carries enabled more. You already talked about how we don't want to be seeing Dan on this Karma. We want to be seeing Misfits leverage the 1-3-1 style that they often found success with domestically and on the EU Masters stage. So all eyes will be on top and mid coming into this game.
And at the end of the day, if I'm kind of pushed, the reason why I went against SK with this prediction is in that Final Four, when you need to win the game, they seemed, after an 8-game losing streak, to be completely out of confidence in how to close a game, over-forcing that Nexus for minutes on end. So you got to be able to close games, and if Misfits hit the things they need, like leader's strength level, they do know how to win with that.
And again, what I really want to reiterate is how wonderful it is to see that direct talent pathway from sitting in your bedroom, playing in a national league, going to the European Masters, and now finding your way onto the LEC stage. It is a clear pipeline of talent that we have in Europe, and it's really nice to celebrate that. And especially, I think this game will hopefully be a celebration of that talent.
But it's also a matchup that can determine whether these teams can make it to playoffs or not. So the stakes are very different now that they're on the big stage.
Yeah, I mean, there is a huge amount on the line for both of these teams. It's incredibly important, and both teams need that win. Let's send it over to our casters.
Thank you very much.